Good morning, everyone. I'm Bonnie Bresch, and I'm delighted to be here with you this morning. I have 4 individuals who are going to participate with us in a panel or open discussion. I'd like to introduce Phil Kelly. He is a patient advocate and researcher in support of patients with bladder cancer. He's been involved in trials in more of a management and consulting role as to the design of some of these trials. I'd also like to introduce Nneka Smith. She is a sickle cell disease patient and advocate. She also is an allied health professional, a teacher, and a health and well-being blogger, and she currently is in a clinical trial. Welcome, Nneka.
Hello, thank you.
Next, we have Anita Eichrold. She's the executive director of the Norwegian Bladder Cancer Society. She is a disease and patient advocate, as well as a current study participant. And Thomas Smith, who is a cystic fibrosis patient and advocate, and he's worked within industry on research ethics committees with multiple European patient organizations. And he's passionate about his role, as you'll see, in patient advocacy. Good morning, Thomas.
Morning.
So we have a few questions that the 5 of us have had a chance to talk about, particularly as it relates to the design and thinking about decentralized or hybrid studies. So the first question I'd like to ask each of you is that each of you have participated in clinical studies, whether it's as a participant or as an advocate or someone who's been advising. What do you believe is the most important construct in study design? Now, whether that's a decentralized, hybrid, or traditional study. Phil, can I ask you to kick us off?
Oh, good morning. Thank you, Bonnie. I'm sure that people who are leading on clinical trials will be clear about what they hope and aspire to get out of the trial. What I would like to advocate is that they also think about the benefits and demands for patients from the get-go. And remember that the people who are going to participate in the trial will be sick people who've been through a lot, who will need to be handled and managed with care and sensitivity, and will have their own demands at home and in their lives. So I think that the design of the trial needs to think about maximizing the benefits for participants and minimizing the demands in whatever way that might be. Now, some of the benefits for the participants, the patients involved, could be altruistic. I'm sure there'll be a sense of wanting to help other people with a similar condition, but there's no reason why they couldn't articulate what would make being a member of a trial helpful and beneficial from them. And I think the important thing is to think about that from the beginning. And if it requires additional costing to maximize the benefits for patients, then so be it. So that would be my starting point.
Okay. Maybe, Phil, do you have another idea about a benefit that, what did you have in mind in terms of benefits for all participants?
I think when I was being in my active treatment, I missed out on an opportunity to enter a clinical trial. I'd look for trials to be a participant in. And what I was hoping would be that would ensure that I had the best standard of clinical practice applied to my situation. So the maximum level of intervention, monitoring, and from the most qualified and expert people in my condition. So that is something that is of significant benefit to the participants is to get the best service that there is available for their condition.
Okay, thank you. Now, these are concepts that those of us who are involved in clinical research have heard. And I think what's important is that we're continuing to hear them. That aspect of what does it mean to be patient-centric really hasn't changed. Thomas, can you add your thoughts about what's the most important construct in study design?
Absolutely, thank you very much. I think for me, it's more of a philosophy and a core belief that I really don't think that it's possible to involve patients too early or too much. I think, you know, I'm not special. There are plenty of people like me who are who have done training like the Party Fellowship or something else that are knowledgeable and also, you know, don't need to be, I suppose, babied or patronized too much. And I think, for me, I would like to see a fundamental kind of shift in things. And I think transparency is the most important thing. And I think that if you involve people as early, as much as possible, then you'll get, you know, more relevant, you know, like Phil was saying, endpoints and outcomes and stuff like that. So I think that, you know, in the UK, for example, when you submit for ethical approval of your trial, the minimum threshold for kind of ticking the patient involvement box is basically, have you shown patients your recruitment materials? Or, and I would imagine in real life, the question goes, what do you think of this poster? And the patient goes, yeah, it's all right. And you know, and that's it. And I think that really betrays what patients are able to contribute to the whole thing, whether it's, you know, like say the protocol, the design, the endpoints, whatever. I understand it's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as saying, bring everyone in, everything's fine. Obviously, there's things like commercial sensitivity to respect and stuff like that. But I think in general, if you can, you know, put in a bit of legwork, bring people in as much as possible, you know, you'll get better products, better services out of it. You might save some money, potentially all of those things. So yeah, for me, like, you can't do too much of that kind of thing.
You had used the phrase to me, you want the sponsors of the studies to invite patient representatives to get deeply involved. What do you mean by deeply involved in the study development?
I think it's a good question. I'm sure anyone who's watching this would, you know, that's probably the main thing that they're looking for. I think on a more philosophical level, because there are people like me, Anita, Nika, Phil, who are knowledgeable and able to contribute value, let them decide, you know, just kind of as much as possible, offer them or offer patients, whether it's an independent like myself, a patient organization, give them sort of first refusal, say, you know, this is what we're doing, this is what we plan to do, work with us, what do you think about it? And, you know, there's no, in my opinion, and I think the way things are starting to move, there's no difference in the amount of value that I can add versus someone who's a physician or a trial manager or anything like that. So, you know, in any possible, the more proactive you can be about it, the better it's going to be. So just in every single way possible, bring us in.
Okay. I'd like to take a slightly different turn here. One way that the COVID pandemic has impacted the world of clinical research is the acceleration of use of new techniques and technologies for engaging with study participants. In our discussions, all of you felt strongly about differentiating between connections and connectivity. Can you share your thoughts about this, Anita?
Sure. When I will take the background first, because I was very sick when I get into this trial. I had severe bladder cancer. It was advanced, and I was actually planning for my funeral. So when I was asked to join this trail, I was so pleased, and I had to go to the hospital every 14 days for 1.5 years, probably 2 years if I survived, and that was for me just a pleasure. In these days at the hospital and these visits that could be up to 7-8 hours maybe each time, I got the opportunity to talk with the doctors, to tell them about all the side effects that I had, and they gave me a huge mental support that I think would have been impossible to do like this on a screen. So, but first of all, I believe that the trust must be there, and the trust, I think you have to see the doctors and see the team, and like you said, Thomas, get involved, could have a lot of time to ask all these questions, and they can trust that I can take all this information and let me be a part of it. They did it, and I loved all these physical meetings. So for me, it wouldn't have been a choice to replace these meetings with virtual meetings. No, I can't hear you, Bonnie.
If anybody is playing the virtual meeting bingo, you can now check your Bonnie, I can't hear you button. Thank you, Anita. Thomas, do you want to add something to that concept of what's the difference between a connection and being connected in terms of connectivity?
Yes, I think it can feel like when you participate in a trial or a study or you name it, it can feel very much like you kind of you go to your outpatients clinic, somebody explains what to expect and what you need to do, and then it can be a bit like, bugger off, we'll see you in 12, 18 months kind of thing, fill this diary in or whatever. But I think it doesn't need to be as hands-off as that, because like I've said before, I need to feel obligated to something. And if it's just a piece of paper telling me what to do, I'm going to struggle to care about that over long term. When the novelty of participating wears off, which will often be quite quickly, I don't really, it's difficult to care. But I think that we need to humanize the process, and as much as possible, I appreciate there's all kinds of compliance issues, but we need to move toward building a better relationship with our participants. I think, saying do this, we'll see you in 6 months for a checkup kind of thing, it's not good enough. And I think, for example, if there was a more active role for study liaison, for example, somebody that like a point of contact, somebody that I can approach if I have questions at any point, or somebody, vice versa, checking on me. Any questions? How are you doing? Is everything okay? How do you feel? Things like that. Then I think I think it'd really help a lot with retention. I really do. And humanize the process and build relationships as much as possible.
Thank you. Nika, did you want to add something from your perspective? You're actively involved in a trial right now.
Yeah, so I was just going to add that I'm very fortunate because where the centre that my trial is being run at is actually my hospital. So I've gone from not seeing my haematology team more than once a year for my annual checkup to seeing them monthly. And it has made such a difference. I now speak to my haematology nurse once or twice a month. She emails me, she rings me, reminds me of when I need to come in. I see my consultant at least once or twice a month now, and it has made such a difference. I now feel connected to my team and to my point of care, whereas before I knew I could get in touch with them, but there wasn't this regular point of access. And I think for those who are part of the trial but aren't necessarily from that centre, they wouldn't necessarily have that connection to the team. So they're going from not knowing anybody in the team to occasionally seeing this face once a month. And I think things like getting to know the team, especially in this COVID time, be it virtual or anything, that's really important, because for me, I was shielding at the beginning for 4 months, and the only time I left my house was to go to the clinical trial. And I'm an extrovert, and even for me, that induced panic. Like, I hadn't been out for months and months on end. So yeah, I think it's really important that we remember that a lot of people taking part in these trials are not part of the centres that the trials are being run in, so don't know any of the specialists or any of the team. And it's really important that that is number one, that before anything starts, any treatment, any liaising, that an opportunity to meet the team and get to know the medical professionals. I know you're not going to meet many of the other participants, but medical professionals, and form that link and that bond is very key.
Okay, thank you. Clinical trial operations professionals have many different ways of defining hybrid trials, such as this combination of in-person and remote or telemedicine visits, or integrating wearable technologies that provide passive data to the study physicians, or using mobile technologies for active sharing of information and data. Which, if any of these approaches, have been used in your study, and how did you experience them? If you could have incorporated one of these ideas into your study experience, what would that be and why? Neka, can I ask you to continue your thinking?
Yeah, so I think connectivity and connection is very key, like I've said. So especially for those who are on trials during COVID, a lot of them are shielding. So they are very isolated. So having the opportunity to have telemedicine visits, have a kind of mental health check-in, how you're doing every so often, makes a world of difference, and it adds to the trial because it means that the participant is more willing to stick with it, and is going to be feeling like their involvement matters and their views and their opinion matter. So it's all good and well having, you know, your daily or your weekly things to fill in and your checklists. But yeah, it's just really important to make sure that there is that added connectivity when you're doing things from a distance.
Anita, what about in your study participation?
I could have had some tele or virtual meetings, but I'm, as Neka, quite sure that you have to have this first meetings must be face to face, because it's about trust. For me, it was all about trust. If I couldn't trust them, they had my life in their hands, so I needed this trust so deeply. And I needed also this mental care or support that they could give me. But I believe that in Norway, it's a long country, it's far distance between the hospitals and the clients or the patients. So in Norway, especially, it's very, very important that we get these hybrid solutions. And I think that will encourage more people to enroll. It makes it easier, but it has to be personalized in a way and adjusted for technical skills, for how severe the illness is, maybe. And also, I believe to a certain extent that you have to put in some wishes from the patient itself. I could have, if it was available, I'm quite sure that we could have some meetings in between and not every 14 days that I had to go there. But I'll see. But the first meeting and this trust meeting, and where you get all this information, I believe you can't do that virtually.
So we're getting a number of questions where people are anxious to hear, are there any aspects of the decentralization, the having more connectivity, whether that's technological or telemedicine or whatever it may be, that would improve the experience?
Could I say something?
Please.
I was, like Neka says, I was one of those people that lives not in the area of where the research takes place. Research in the UK takes place in specialist hospitals, regional centres. I received my treatment through a local district hospital. So for me, it's 2 hours travel to get to the research centre. And I'm sure in Norway, it could take even longer for somebody to actually get to where the research is based. So I can see that there's lots of potential benefits of remote access and being able to do virtual connectivity with the clinical team in terms of minimizing the sort of physical demands on poorly patients, travel and time, which is precious to these people. However, I think we've all agreed that the importance of the personal links with the team that's leading the research is critical. And I wouldn't want hybrid trials to go in the other direction and become mechanical, and to take advantage of the centre being able to use other methods to make life easier for them. If it's easier for the patient is one thing, rather than it being easier for the clinicians. I was involved in a trial that struggled in the outpost to recruit. And I think part of the problem was that they didn't have access to the leader of the clinical trial, who was a very charismatic, very clear and very articulate clinician. The people who attended the specialist hospital where he was based were recruited successfully. And that was partly about what Thomas talked about, an attachment and a belief in credibility in that particular individual. Now, I guess virtually he could have recorded himself talking about the trial, and that could have been shared extensively with people out in the sticks, and that could have been helpful. But I think the personal one-to-one, face-to-face contact is pivotal, really. The research centres in the UK do usually have a role which is a research nurse who can actually try and make the personal contact and do what Thomas talked about, phone people up in between times, ask how they are there any particular problems, etc. And I think that needs to be built into the trial from the get-go.
So let me drill down a little bit into that, and Thomas, maybe you and Anita can add in here. But what about things like email or mobile apps, blogs, other technologies, communications technologies? Do you think that you can establish this kind of personal connection through these tools?
Yes, I think please forget about all your expensive proprietary apps. WhatsApp is fine, you know, like you don't need to build something or pay a lot of money for something like that, because at the end of the day, it's about the message, not necessarily how you actually get it to people. And that kind of, I suppose, the conduit for information doesn't really matter as long as the information is passing. And I think to just, I suppose, piggyback on this question about improved connectivity, I think so. What's happened with NECA, and what I was hoping to add earlier, is you've had a really positive experience of a trial. You've come closer to your care team, and actually what that does is establish it. There's a net gain there as far as a legacy goes, of being closer to your team and being able to advocate for your own interests, build a better relationship, ask more questions, and all that kind of thing. So actually, to answer your question, Bonnie, yes, apps, email, phone calls. You know, I'm 33 now. It's not. I definitely wouldn't consider myself a millennial, but I bloody love a phone call. I love chatting to people. But other than that, WhatsApp is more than sufficient.
Okay. Has anybody used some of these kinds of technologies in your study? I guess, Anita and NECA, this would come to you. And if you haven't, what would you be interested in having incorporated?
Apart from feeding back on the tablet that I've been given, we've just kept it basic, and we've just kept emails, telephone calls, and kept those as the way of keeping in touch. And I think that just takes it back to where we used to be and how we used to connect. Within medicine, you used to always get a phone call or a message, for whether it be a letter or a text from your physician. And we kind of moved away from that, and we tried to make things quicker and more efficient. But what that did was just made things a little less personal. So I don't think there is a massive need for anything hugely different to what we have. Like what we've done with Zoom over COVID has just shown that that little bit of interaction makes a huge difference. And I think that's the line that most people need to take.
Anita, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I can just say, because I didn't use it in this trial, because I love so much being at the hospital with all these nice people and clever people. But I can see for others, and I can see now when I'm using, due to COVID, I'm using, I connect my private doctor, or for other things, I do the virtual meetings. Because now in Norway, you can choose between going to the site or stay back home. And they get the same paid, and that's why it's working in Norway now. So I can see that is so easy and so comfortable when when it's talking about normal, or I should say normal diseases or something smaller problems. But when you are very sick and you feel that you need all the help that you can get, then I wanted to go to the hospital to ensure that they could answer all my questions and that they had time enough for me. Because I'm afraid also that a virtual meeting was, okay, I have 5 minutes, and you can see that they are maybe stressed or something. So no, I think it's, for me, it's still working best like it is.
So I just want to let my panelists know that we have tons of questions that are coming in from the participants. So they've asked us if we'll continue for just a few minutes before the break. So one of those questions has to do with any of you who have been involved, I think this might be Thomas and Phil, but involved in the design of studies or providing feedback. Do either of you have any experience with, or could compare your experience in consulting on a traditional trial or a hybrid decentralized trial? Thomas, have you?
After you, Phil. Go on.
Okay, I'll kick it off. We haven't talked about taking advantage of local resources. I mean, we've talked about the human element, and we've all got GP practices, practice nurses, and health services locally. In terms of maintaining the involvement that we've advocated for, the sort of more personal input, there's no reason why some of the trial can't be subcontracted, decentralized to local services with people that we might be familiar with. So, I mean, that could be one of the things that could be considered in designing the trial. Because obviously, that would help with reducing journey time, travel time to get blood tests, etc., if they can be completed locally with people that patients already trust. Thomas, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, simply that because this is relatively new, it's really exciting, and I think that generally speaking, when you have a hybrid or you kind of planning a decentralized kind of trial, there's more appetite to try something new, and that's what I love about it. And I think that as time goes on, those more progressive approaches are going to yield increasing return on investment, and they will get better over time. So yeah, it's exciting, and I much prefer it.
Nneka, what about when the studies are coming to a close, or how would you like your communication or your connection to the study team to continue? Would you like that?
So for me personally, I'm very lucky. Well, depends how you see it. Mine is a genetic disorder, so I am seen by my team as an expert because I live with it. I've had it, and it continues. A lot of the trials happen for people who are diagnosed with something and suddenly they've had this massive change in their life. Those are the ones especially that need some continual, especially decentralized follow-up care, because these people have gone through a massive kind of change in their life, and they've gone from being regular, happy people to having something that's impacted their life so significantly that, you know, as Anita was saying, they were so ill, they were close to death. So the follow-up needs to be patient-centered. There needs to be an element of kind of mental health, and I know that's going to be covered later on, follow-ups as well. And just have a person or a group that these participants can get in touch with, whether that be at the end of the trial, the participants are allowed to interact with each other on, say, a blog site, or where they can ask questions to each other, so that they've got a connectivity with people that have either been through it or can support them further. I think that's really important.
One other question came in. Each of us have talked about the importance of having these connections. Was there anything that your study team did at the beginning that really solidified that connection? What did people do to build trust? Yes, go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, I believe that first of all,
And Anita, we're having a little trouble hearing you, so maybe the mic.
let's try like this. Is it better?
Slightly, yes.
Yeah, yes. I believe that what this team did was that they were natural. They were just telling me how it should work, and had a lot of time for questions. They said that we are this doctor are the only one. He would follow me for 1.5 years, and these two nurses. I got a private telephone number so I could phone them during the night if it was needed. And they said that they would be there for me, and I trusted that. And that was it was such a big relief that I had only these three people that should take care of me, not all these others and the big hospitals that they changed every day. But no, it was these three lovely persons that should take care of me. And that was, it's a huge benefit. And I think that that must be communicated or told to the people that want to enroll, that this is a benefit, and that they also wanted to see me so often. That was also for me a huge benefit, because I loved to have that attention. I needed it, and I
Mhm.
needed their mental support.
So we're going to need to wrap up right now, and I'd like to just draw a line through some of the feedback that you've provided to us. For me, one of the things I hear you saying, that when we're developing the decentralized trials, and the idea here is to take that opportunity to be responsive to the different needs that individual patients may have. So one may prefer that telemedicine visit, while another one will prefer to hold off on holiday in order to be there in person. But even that same one person may value a technology-based connection at particular moments in time, but not all the time.
Mm.
The other thing I would say is encourage the study planners to not homogenize the feedback. Often I find that we are looking for the common theme, the common thread of all of the feedback, but we want to tune ourselves into what are the differences, and how do we continue to look at each person within each disease area and meet them where they are, understanding that each person is at a different place in their journey. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone who's joined us, and particularly our panelists, Phil, Neka, Anita, and Thomas. It's been wonderful to be with all of you.